Good morning. Welcome to the first meeting of the new year for the Public Planning Committee, January 11th. Are there any changes to the agenda? We can submit it or approve it as submitted.
Move adoption is written.
Second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you very much. Any additions, deletions, or corrections of the approval of minutes for October 13th and November 9th, 2000?
Adoption is written.
Second. Second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you very much. Appearance by citizens. Kimberly, do we have citizens who wish to speak this morning?
We do, yes. Valdan Lee. David Schweiger.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hope you're all enjoying this northern weather. We'd like some warm weather. My name is Dave Schweiger. I live at 140 Jacana Street in North Forest Beach. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with you. I have a few questions and just a few observations I'd like to share. I've been able to review your last materials that you posted, and you posed a bunch of questions there. And I just want to start off with that about 12 years ago, I moved from Columbia, South Carolina, where I live down here. And we picked living in North Forest Beach and not in a gated community for a reason. We love the feel of the place. It was a great place to live. And we invested, quite a bit of money in building a small but really nice home there. And we've come to experience over the last 10, 12 years how the character of the neighborhood is changing, and not necessarily for the better, to be very honest with you. When I went in there, I looked at what the zoning was like. I was very careful, and it was residential, single family. And then I read what that really meant. It was a place where we could live peacefully, where it was quiet, and any of the standards that anyone would want to live. And it's nothing new to any of you, probably repeating what many people have said to you about how the short-term rentals have had a tremendous impact on that. On Jacana Street in particular, they have put up two what we'll call big box houses with the sheer purpose of rental. Nobody lives in it all year round. And I think that defies what the intent was of living in a neighborhood. And I've, over the time, tried to reconcile my mind how residential single family is turned into VRBO. That wasn't the original intent of the zoning, and the zoning hasn't changed from what I've seen. And I was here several years ago when there was a house, double house being built on Heron, and we came in here and we talked, and they made changes to not allow Heron to turn into a mini hotel. And now we're seeing that instead of maybe we're putting two of these together, we're stuffing tons and tons of bedrooms into these big boxes. In fact, one of my neighbors who lives across the street will speak to you in a moment. And they've put up these two homes. Each has 7 bedrooms. That's 14 bedrooms on what was once one lot, but just barely able to put on for 2 lots. That is probably, if you can imagine how many cars, I don't even know how you park 14 cars in there. And then if you probably figure people coming with family, it's probably at least maybe 28 people that all of a sudden are there. We've got cars that are parking on.
That's your time.
Okay. Can I just have one more minute, please?
No, I'm sorry I can't, but thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
We have heard them before.
Patricia Courtney.
Hi, I'm Patricia Courtney. I live in Palmetto Dunes as well as own some short-term / long-term vacation rentals. My questions I really have is, we keep talking about short-term rentals and we keep talking about housing. And my real question is, we have people that are second homeowners who do retreats, who do family reunions. Their usage of that house is no different than volume-wise, occupancy-wise, than what you're complaining about a short-term rental. We keep attacking one area, and even when we go and we look at your dashboards and everything, the complaints were not there. I think we need to revamp how we're doing it and look at what we've already done and what we'll do in the future. Grandfather what's there, and in the future, start looking at how we're allowing the number of bedrooms in a house, but not going after, because we would not, a person who's at their second home and doesn't rent, who's got a complaint about noise, but it's not a short-term rental, you're not doing anything about. A person who does either a religious or a corporate retreat in a non-rental, you're not doing anything about. So this is very short-sighted that we're only going after what we consider short-term rentals. And even a long-term rental could wind up in a situation where it's overcrowded. So I think you're really honing in the wrong way. I think you need to be looking at future builds and making sure you limit the number of bedrooms for the neighborhood, not just, I know you're doing the size of the house, you need to look at the occupancy at the time you're giving the building permit, not 3 years after. I think you're missing the point there. And I think it's also, people need to be able to afford what they've already had, and when you start changing occupancy, they can't afford what they have. And there's a huge amount of money that goes into the whole economy here by people being able to have the house that they have built today or condo they have built today and have people stay in it and contribute to the economy here. I also would like to know if you'll open it up for public discussions after you get to the unfinished business, because people would have more questions.
Thank you very much.
Melissa Robin.
Good morning, everybody. Melissa Robin. I'm a short-term rental owner. I'm also on the board of the Hilton Head Vacation Rental Association. I'm a little confused by the process. Typically, in public meetings that I've gone to, the public comments at the end of the meeting so that we can have a dialogue. I'm here to listen today. That being said, I guess a couple of points that I would make. I'm pleased to know that there's going to be the formation of a planning committee to take the ordinance to the next phase. I'd like to request that the HHVRA have a seat on that board, and that you would consider some of the people that might be less familiar to town government, like myself. Our board is, our association, I should say, is a little different because we're the collective voice of the entire island. We're looking at all issues, whether they be economic impacts to neighborhoods, all of that. We are a collective voice. And I do believe open and transparent planning process will benefit everybody to have better, regulations for all. I would also say as my second point that, as you all know, because you've been looking at this a long time, one size doesn't fit all. You know, what works for, let's say, a 2-bedroom villa like mine on Ocean Lane is going to be very different than somebody who has a house that maybe is geared towards, golf weekends of, 8 single men that, in their 60s, they don't want to share a bedroom with somebody they don't know that well. So I really believe the island has room for all of this. Hilton Head has demonstrated through decades of some really careful, thoughtful planning, which is what drew me to this beautiful place in the first place. So I look forward to seeing the process as it unfolds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melinda Tunner.
Good morning. Melinda Tunner, Palmetto Hall. My comments are regarding the creation of a short-term advisory committee. I think the work is important, but I don't think you need an advisory committee to get the work done. There are 2 work streams regarding short-term rentals. The first is to analyze the data from the past year. I know a lot of work has already been done in this area to consolidate and display the information with mapping of locations, dashboards, and vendor reports. I recommend that staff put together a presentation regarding the results and provide any recommended changes to the current ordinances which are very operational in nature. This could be presented to the PPC. The second and more important work is the strategy regarding where and how short-term rentals are used within communities. STR is already discussed in the trends and assessment report you are presenting today, and STR should be part of district planning. This work should be included already in the consultant-led process you have been embarking on through the LMO and district planning process. This way, you will have an independent view as you discuss this important issue. Feedback from STR businesses and other interested parties, along with community members, would then be heard through the public process as this work moves along. Thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback.
Matt Sweeney. Matt Sweeney. Pam Franklin.
Good morning. My name is Pam Franklin. I reside at 219 Cordillo Parkway. I'd like to thank those of you on the board that have taken me up on my offer. Several times I've emailed to come to my home and look at specifically this Hickory Lane, Shellman Lane debauchery, as I like to call it. 2 years ago, they started 2.5 now with a clear cut. The people that were investing in this property, which we all know you cannot do a clear cut on this island, yet they brought the machine there and said, I didn't know we weren't allowed. They consistently asked for forgiveness instead of permission, dug foundations, dug pools, all without permission, all without permits, stop work orders numerous times, all hoping they wouldn't get caught by the concerned citizens that reside and live in that small neighborhood. What is already there is 18 Hickory Lane, which is at least 7, if not 8 bedrooms, dubbed the Hickory Hotel by the builder himself. And what is being proposed is 5 more 7 to 8 bedroom homes on postage stamps with pools. Now, I ask you, there are already 2 homes that share Shellman Lane. You are looking to pack in conservatively an additional 120 people every single week. Forget the noise, forget the trash, forget the flooding, forget all of that. Let's talk about the safety of what that means on a street that is no longer than from that board to that end of the building. That's it. It's a small street. You're gonna have cars whipping up and down here. When does the tragedy happen? When? You have a responsibility. You have been elected. You have worked for this town. You are being paid by the townspeople. You have a responsibility for the safety and the integrity of this island, the safety of its citizens. And I assure you, if you do not reduce this parking, and if you do not reduce the FAR and how big these structures can build, and don't grandfather these people in who have not submitted plans, and don't take 2 more years for this process to happen. You can't have backlit signs. You can't have signs tall. You can't have trees cut down. Yet you want to put an additional 6 ginormous homes on postage stamps of property and allow these vehicles to come down. Someone is going to get harmed. Someone is going to get killed. A tragedy will occur. And when it does, you can say, gee, I wish I would have. I wish we would have done something about it. You have an opportunity to do the right thing. It may not be the most popular thing, but you have an opportunity to do it. I am pleading with you to do the right thing here and reduce this. And remember this, I will leave you with this. You have to deal with the situation you have, not the one you want to have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Jim Brawley.
Good morning. My name is Jim Broley. I live on Jacana Street, right off a spur road that's called RS 729. I'm going to echo a lot of the things that you've already heard, so I don't want to be too redundant. But when I moved in 1998, there were 4 3-bedroom homes. That's why we selected North Forest Beach. We have been coming for 25 years as a timeshare resident. It was serene. The character was wonderful. It was safe, and the proximity to the beach as well as to Coligny was fantastic. We now have 4 years ago 2 large rental boxes, that's all they are, that are roughly 100 feet from my back door. And we've now added, beyond the 12 bedrooms that we used to have, we now have 14 more bedrooms and the cars that come with it and the traffic that with it. I've had to put slow down signs on my back door as well as on the front door because of all the cars coming back and forth. They're 30 foot from my back door. In addition to that, which I've also filled out a survey several months ago and hope we get the result of that survey at some point in time. The walk to Coligny was approximately 10, 15 minutes. You met joggers and pedestrians. Now we have electric bikes, we have skateboards, we have electric skateboards. You take your life in your hand to go there. Having said that, it feels like as a resident, we have absolutely no control over what's happening. The contractors can come in and put big box rentals anywhere they want, and we have no say. Our neighborhood is being reduced to big boxes, and it's not the same neighborhood that it was that we came here 28 years ago to look at. Our safety, the character, the serenity is all gone to hell in a handbasket, and I hope you review your rules and stop the deterioration and destruction of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That's all I have.
Thank you. I think to a large degree, the conversations we're having today deal with many of those comments that were just made. The first item of unfinished business is a presentation of land management ordinance contract and project schedule. Missy Lewitt, Director of Planning. I will add that the town has presented an RFP to consultants to get involved in this very important process back in September, and the staff has been interviewing, scoring the candidates. And Missy will have an announcement today. This has to do with the presentation has to do with the scope and schedule. And we also have something called quick fixes that I think are in the minds of many people. Missy, thank you very much for the time you've taken to make this presentation.
Thank you.
We're loading, yeah. It's almost.
May I, just as a point of information for those
Please.
who made comments while we're waiting for that to load, a number of you mentioned you were hoping that there would be opportunity for comments after presentation. That is typically the case, that it's opened back up for comments after the presentation, just so you're aware.
Good to go.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm Missy Lewick. I'm the Director of Planning, for the record. I am really excited to talk about our land management ordinance contract and project schedule and have some exciting announcements to make. But first, I want to just kind of get everyone up to speed on this project that we've been working on for about a year and a half. And we have had a plan in place, the LMO amendment plan, to incorporate policy changes to address basically our entire land management ordinance, the big binder behind me, to bring it into conformance with our comprehensive plan, our plan, and also to bring it into conformance with the district plans that we're currently working on. And we've made some progress along the way. So highlighted up on the screen are several phases of LMO amendments that have been reviewed and approved and adopted by Town Council in 2023. And we're continuing that process. We also released an RFQ in September of this year, and we're seeking firms to help us with the overhaul of the code, so the total rewrite of the code to bring it more into conformance with the direction that our comprehensive plan is taking us as a community. And we identified in that scope for seeking consultants to help us 6 key aspects. And the number one was the alignment with those plans, research and input from town staff, from stakeholders, from consultants, from best practices, from learning from other communities and how they write their codes and what's working. And then working on drafting those amendments. So code writing, of course, is a big part of this, and making sure that we're writing innovative code that can handle the topics that we have that are important to us, such as stormwater and our subdivision, short-term rentals we just heard a little bit about, transportation, how we're going to address housing, and more. So it includes all topics, not just those that are in the short list. And then how we're going to engage the community in those amendments. So what's the public engagement process then to make sure that the community understands what these code changes are, what they mean, and how they affect real property. And then we will have that code drafting, a zoning amendment, a zoning map will be created, and then we'll go through an adoption process at the end. And so I'm really excited to talk about our current preferred consultant, Code Studio. We have just signed the contract ourselves here and have sent it over to the vendor for their counter signature. So we're really excited to talk about that. And I'm going to let them give a little bit of their background in just a second because they are on the call. But the team, I feel like, gives us the team that we need for we as staff and the community at large to feel confident that we have the right firm to help us get through this process and make sure that at the end of the day, we have a code that meets our community needs, that speaks to where we're headed as a community, and they have the capacity to get that done. And when we were looking for consultants and reviewing the firms that applied and going through the interview process, we were really looking to the core values that we have in our plan, and one of those is excellence. And so we were looking for a firm that has that experience that we could pull from to find best-in-class code writing experience. Code Studio will give a little bit of background, but they have worked in South Carolina, they've worked in Charleston, they've worked in Greenville and helped with some zoning recommendations and a zoning ordinance in both of those communities. They've worked extensively throughout the country, but some communities that I'm going to highlight are both resort communities and coastal communities. They've worked in Asheville, North Carolina, Bozeman, Montana, Honolulu, Jackson, Wyoming, Ogden City, Utah, Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And then on the coast, they've worked in several communities in Louisiana, California, Texas, Rhode Island. In Virginia Beach, they wrote an oceanfront form-based code. So they have extensive experience. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and talk about some of their involvement in code writing throughout the country. And we have the 2 project leads here that I'll introduce you to. Colin Scharf and Christy Dodson are on the call. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you to do a brief introduction of both yourselves and explain a little bit about the firm.
Thank you. Thank you, Mitzi. Hopefully you hear me. My name is Colin Scuff, co-founder of Code Studio. Code Studio has been around since 2006, so we've been working on zoning and plan implementation for 17 years now, 18 years. Before that, I used to work for a company called Duncan Associates, which is another code writing firm. So graduated college in about 2002, worked at Duncan Associates, and Duncan Associates originally worked on your code back then. So I had a little bit of I did a little bit of work on that code back in 2002. I think I worked on some of the graphics. We're really excited about working on this project. I've got Christy here with me.
Do you need me to
Yeah,
pause?
Manage this
Colin,
project.
can I interrupt? We are having a little bit of feedback on our side, so if I can just pause you right there. I don't think we could hear you very well.
Is it on our end, or is it a microphone on their end? We don't know.
Have him turn his laptop volume down.
Colin, can you turn your laptop volume down, perhaps? Try that.
Okay, let's try it.
I hear you.
Colin, go ahead and maybe summarize what you've already said.
Is that better?
I'm not sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. It's just whether or not we hear the static that goes along with it.
Can you hear me now?
Have him go ahead and start speaking and then.
Can anybody hear me?
We can hear you, Colin. We do still have a little feedback, but why don't you try to summarize? We apologize.
That's good. Do you want me to start again?
Yeah.
The big intro. I'll just go over it again real quick. But my name is Colin Scott. I'm co-founder of
If we
Code
can't
Studio.
comprehend what he's saying, then I
Code
think
Studio
I'm gonna
started in
summarize.
2006, so we've been doing this kind of work for
Colin, I'm
17
sorry.
years, almost 18 years
We're
now.
still unable to really hear in this room, so I will,
What about a cell phone call?
I will call you on your cell phone.
Okay.
I didn't bring it.
You can go ahead, Colin.
Okay. Can I try again? How's that?
We will just increase the volume on the microphone. Again, apologize.
Can you all hear me? Like if you give me a thumbs up or something, Missy, I can see you.
Can everyone hear?
Not easily.
You need to turn the volume up.
Missy, as much as we want to hear directly from them, if we can't, just
How to know
thank them.
if you guys can hear me okay?
We can't hear me. We can only hear you.
I don't know, Missy, can you hear me? If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up.
Just hang up.
Okay, Missy, let's move on.
We're going to move on, Colin and Christy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Goodbye.
Well, I don't think, anyway, that's fine. Okay, I am sorry about that. We did test before the meeting, but obviously it wasn't working. So we've assembled a team with Code Studio. They have extensive code experience throughout the country. They've written innovative codes throughout the country. They have also assembled a really high-quality sub-consultant team with experts that can also assist us with some of our stormwater and engineering and natural resource and to assist with some of the public engagement. The firm does do work nationally. Again, as I mentioned, they do have experience in the state of South Carolina and in resort and coastal communities that they can pull from. So the process that we have identified for the code includes overall their process is 5 tasks where we'll work with them to identify what all the issues are. We're going to talk a little bit about quick fixes, public engagement, drafting code, and the zoning map and the adoption process. We also are approaching this that the project would be completed and divided into 2 main parts that we will use to implement, and one is an initial set that we're calling a quick fix, and then the rest of the full overhaul of the code would be in the full rewrite. And so we intend to kick off with Code Studio in February. And from there, we will begin with that initiation and issue identification. They will come here and we will go out in the community and get them familiarized with Hilton Head Island and what our needs and issues are. They're going to be completing something called a code audit, and then they'll identify a code blueprint that will identify kind of the detailed path forward based on their assessment in that code audit and their professional recommendations on how to address these needs. From there, we will implement those quick fix and accelerate some of those amendments. And in that initial stage, we'll also launch that public engagement program for this work. And then that code blueprint will have an endorsement step in it. And then we will work on, after that quick fix, really turning the page and working on that full code overhaul and rewrite. So that's the big picture process, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what is included in that quick fix to make sure that we have a discussion and clear direction on what items can be included in that. Yes.
Let me interrupt for a second. In the agenda packet, it showed sort of 3 segments of the process. Did I hear you talk about that? When are we expecting this process to be concluded, and when do we expect the quick fixes to be concluded?
Well, I can say that I don't want to get too stuck on like a timetable, but we will begin in this initiation period within the first 3 months. We're going to dive right in and start working on those quick fixes. We all know that that public review process takes a little bit of time. So just know that that's on the table once we get the issues identified and get them up to speed with orientation, that we will be drafting that code and getting it ready for vetting within that first 3-month timetable. Now, it could be that there's some items that we need to check in and make sure that we're headed in the right direction, and we will continue to use the Public Planning Committee as that sounding board.
Chairman?
Yes.
One other piece that I'm curious about, as you were listing the various stakeholders who would be part of that initial process, one that I didn't hear was the members of council representing their various wards. And as those representatives, we know our wards best. We know the concerns, we hear from our residents, and we interact with them. I would like an opportunity as a representative for Ward 4 who thinks outside the box, outside my ward, but specifically for Ward 4 to make sure that my residents are represented in that initial conversation. So I'm hoping, I'm asking for it to be part of that process, initial process.
Yes, absolutely.
David, I have a follow-up question if I could.
Okay.
Thank you. Missy, we have not been part of the selection process. How many applicants were there?
There were 4.
Right? And why did you select Code Studio over the other 3?
When we evaluated, we did select 2 finalists for interview. They were both great firms, so we couldn't make a bad decision, but I think there was full consensus in the room at the interview table that day that Code Studio brought more expertise, more higher level of confidence in their abilities to do the work and complete the work, and to meet the needs that were identified in the code than the one that they were stacked up against. So
How are our issues presented to these applicants? Was it just a summary? We have a short-term rental issue, we have a parking issue. How was that done? Just in summary.
Oh, sure. It was through an RFQ, and it identified some specific needs. So there was like a lengthy laundry list, if you will, of some of the issues or topics that we would be addressing, but it did also include that there were goals, that it was a full comprehensive rewrite, that it was to create a design-centric code, that it was user-friendly, that it included an applications manual, so it incorporates the full development review program and easeability of utilizing the code at the end. And they do that kind of work. They do graphic-heavy codes, and they work to make sure that the code that they write is easily interpreted and can be implemented easily on the other end, both by the staff that would administer the zoning, but also by the community and the developers that need to read it and understand it.
Did you contact other communities that have been served by Code Studio?
We have, yes.
Good. I have confidence in you and confidence in the team. I just needed that backup information. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, since Mr. Stanford has asked about that, I have confidence in the selection process as well. But I think I recall that one of their partners, if you will, in this project is a law firm, but I didn't hear much about research about the law and whether or not we comply with South Carolina law in adoption or preparation of the draft. So is there a law firm associated with Code Studio?
Well, they have done work and they understand the regulations in South Carolina. I don't recall if they have, well, it's not one of their sub-consultants, but they do have legal expertise within their team to be able to bring code that can be adopted and meets state statutes.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list of sub-consultants, Wagner and Ball, Moffitt and Nickel, Symbiosity, and Where Matters. So none of those are a law firm?
They're not.
No. They do have attorneys on their staff.
I would have to double check on that, but they do have legal expertise as part of their team. I can assure you that.
Just want to make sure that when we go through this process, and I've done this before as an attorney, that we do have legal expertise working with us on the way and not at the end.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Missy.
So if we are comfortable with the overall process of the code overhaul and mainly the main two steps, which is a quick fix approach and then a full overhaul. And there's overlap a little bit with the public engagement and some of those other processes, but we wanted to spend some time to have a conversation about what is included in the quick fix. And the items that are listed here stemmed from a prior plan where we had been, this is what previously was called Phase 4, okay? And these were some of the items that were included in Phase 4. And what we wanted to do when we have this opportunity to reset with a new code writer and process and kickoff was to make sure that the items that are in the quick fix set are truly quick fixes and that we can advance these, they meet an immediate need, and then other items can be moved over to the full code rewrite and we won't get stuck because we need to make sure that the quick fix stays ahead of the full overhaul, that the districts inform that full overhaul, and we have a lot of other process that informs this work that needs to also be advanced. And so I just wanted to kind of get that mindset around all the other work that we have going on that also informs this work. And so with the quick fix set up on the screen includes what was listed in the memo as what was included in the quick fix. And then there are a couple items that have a strike through on them. And those are ones that staff is proposing that we push to the full rewrite. And then I added some in parentheses, just kind of what those might entail a little bit. So single-family dwelling, mass and scale, and single-family parking, we're going to talk about in the next agenda item, are included, and those are calibrations of appropriate scale and appropriate parking calculations for both. Residential subdivision regulations may include context-sensitive design, scale, connectivity, lot configuration, those kinds of components. This, again, in the quick fix may not be the end result of a full subdivision regulation overhaul, but those items that could be influential in addressing some current community needs. Setback angles was what was in the Phase 4 set before was an adjustment to those requirements, and we're recommending that be pushed forward. Public review of the major subdivisions and major developments to require the Planning Commission approval step. That's a process that we have begun, but it is not yet codified. And so that remains in the quick fix set. Making an adjustment to open space standards. And then development site design, which was to establish some construction site management standards. Recommend pushing that. The traffic impact analysis was to adjust both the threshold requirements of when an impact analysis is required, and then to expand the study to include not just vehicular traffic, but multimodal transportation, so vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles. The tree protection item is to strengthen some of our protected tree requirements and tree mitigation. Stormwater was to also strengthen a lot of our stormwater regulations throughout the existing ordinance. The sign standard update is to bring our sign code into compliance with the Reed versus Gilbert case, which is content neutrality. And then we do have on the list that we would do family compound and subdivision regulations to further calibrate those requirements with the purpose and intent of their initial adoption. And I know that was added into the Phase 4 set. It proves to be a difficult topic, and so it doesn't fit the definition of quick, which is the only reason I know it's an important issue that we will work on in the full overhaul, and it's one that was added in. So, but it is one that will take considerable amount of time to sort out. So, are there questions or comments on the quick fix set, and then at least the items that staff has proposed to push to the full rewrite? And then I also wanted to mention that if there are items that stay in the quick fix set that prove to not be quick, we would also push those if we come out and it's going to bog down the whole process, that we would remove those from that quick fix set and push them to the full rewrite.
You see, my observation is that the items that you have included speak to the issues of overdevelopment on the island. And so I am in support of adopting your list of quick fixes to be accomplished within that 3-month time frame that you were talking about for presentation to the public. But I open it to others on the Public Planning Committee. Tyson?
Yes, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you for this information so far. I do recognize this list as part of Phase 4, but I think it's too much to bite off for a quick fix. I think we need to focus on the really hot button issues. And there are two things that I want to ask about. One is we have this conditions and trends assessment, which you're going to talk about later today. But has there been a comparison of these conditions and trends with this list to decide what to include or what to exclude?
Not directly, no. But when we talk about conditions and trends and how we will apply that data, we can, it will be informing all of this work, yes.
Okay. And then the second observation is it does not include the concern of our design review board, which was raised more than 2 years ago, about the mass and scale of non-single family residences. I'll just describe it that way. And that needs absolutely to be on this list because the design review board asked for it more than 2 years ago. I've asked for it personally maybe 5 years ago. And it's time that we include this on the quick fix list because that's another part of the kind of development that is overwhelming our island. And I think, Mr. Chair, I'm just looking at the list, and I would suggest that we reduce the list to focus on single-family dwelling mass and scale only in certain areas. Single-family parking, because we're going to talk about that issue later, I would take that off the list right now. Subdivision regulations, yes. Public review of major subdivisions and major developments, yes. Open space standards, I'd take that off now because I think that might relate to the subdivisions. Traffic impact analysis. Yes, we need improvement. I can tell you this, less neighborhoods, it hardly ever helps. I would put that on the, if someone shows me a need to do that right now, I'd be willing to take a look at that. Tree protection, as far as clear cutting, yes. Sign standards, if there's something we need to do to comply with a case, yes, but only for that reason. That's how I would reduce the list
So
and add that one.
open space, you would prefer to postpone?
Yes.
And traffic analysis if there's a case that demands it?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going next, please.
One single pointed question. Single-family parking, does that include parking for short-term rentals?
Yes, and we will have some additional questions about that on the next agenda item.
It's hard for me to call a short-term rental a single-family property, so that probably should be clarified, including SDRs.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Well, Glenn, your point is extremely well taken. Short-term rentals are not single-family homes by the truest sense of the word. In fact, they're commercial entities masquerading as single-family homes in residential neighborhoods. And you've heard for the better part of 5 years that I've been part of this council, my representation of those residents across this island who are absolutely disturbed, bothered by the infusion, if not a daily consequence of noise, litter, parking, et cetera, but by the mass and scale of the homes that are infiltrating their homes and destroying their quality of life as a Hilton Head Island taxpaying resident. And so you've hit the nail on the head. We need a definition and we need an understanding that commercial buildings are not the same as single-family homes in our neighborhoods. And therefore, the FAR and the parking, which has been part of the conversation for better than 5 years, is not a quick fix here, because it indeed has been part of the conversation of what to do for those residents of Hilton Head Island, first and foremost, for the better part of 5 years. And in fact, we had a solution too that was brought forth, that was voted by ordinance on first reading, 6-1 on the one portion, and 7-0 on the parking piece. And here we are, stuck. First reading of an ordinance, and now we're back to quick fixes? Everyone knows that. We had a situation where these rooms have been packed for the better part of 5 years with residents clamoring for help. I've tried. I have tried for every one of you, and I hear you. And we had a small group of powerful folks who have stood up and pushed back, and their voices have been heard, and we all know who and why that is. And now we sit here looking 3-4 a year out for quick fixes to what we already had solved a month ago at a first reading with a 6-1 and a 7-0 vote. So I don't know how you explain quick fix to a resident of 39,000 people who have asked us for help for better than 5 years that I've been involved. So if you want to go bullet by bullet point, no, we do need a traffic impact analysis because there are neighborhoods that are struggling now because we don't have these regulations with a traffic issue that impacts their lives on a daily basis. They can't get in and out of their houses, whether it's because of the traffic coming in and out, because of the overburdened rental situation, because of the bicycles and the e-bikes that are tooling around all over the places. No, those traffic impact studies are more important than ever in every neighborhood before you will build one more mega home in their neighborhoods that take up every 4 corners as high as this zoning ordinance will allow in terms of height. So do not take that off of a quick fix. Sign standards, we absolutely need to, whatever this issue with sign standards is that has now held us up from looking at what is happening across our island, whereby in the past, we never had neon lights. We had to come before the Design Review Board and the Planning Commission to be able to put up a sign that was within the character of the island, colors, size, standards, fonts, etc. To now we have the type that you have out in front of a used car dealership. So yes, we need to look at whatever the issue is with trying sign standards, get it resolved so we can get back to having the quality of island that we used to have. Tree protection, absolutely. It's not just clear cutting. And we're thinking clear cutting in mass scale when you're looking at a subdivision. We're not talking about clear cutting just as other people have described here. with an individual lot where they go in and they take down historic trees. So you need to understand what clear cutting is. Open space standards, yes, because now you go into an old established historic neighborhood where resident lots can be subdivided and cut in half. And there is no expectation of having open space. It's just one house after another house after another house with no consideration of stormwater and runoff in our environment, our habitat, and we've lost Hilton Head. So I've got lots of issues with all of this. Quick fix, every one of these is important. They've been important for more than 5 years. It's been important since the beginning of Hilton Head Island and since 1982, 1983 when we incorporated. That's why we incorporated. Those of you who are rolling your eyes, your drama is not important here. What's important is why we are who we are, and let's not forget that.
Okay, so what I hear is that there are 3 members of this body who believe that this list is appropriate. There's 1 member who has suggested that multifamily units and the DRB situation be included. Is there a reason why that wasn't included? Or is this only for single-family development? What's the priority?
I won't speak for Missy, I'll speak for myself. These are the topic areas where we have this most significant pressure from overdevelopment, and believe that we need additional tools to provide a mechanism to meet community expectations. And so that's why the non-residential, the commercial multifamily is not on here. We think because of the district planning, the depth of information to go into informing that, will provide the mass and scale for the non-residential. We did, in previous phases, make sure there were no variances for everything but use and density, I believe, and height. So we have put some protections in place. I think right now the biggest pressure is in residential communities from overdevelopment, short-term rental, parking. And so this list has been vetted, and I conferred with Missy. We have the capacity to deliver the ones that aren't struck through. A lot of work has been done over the past several months or year on a lot of this. And we believe we can advance that in the time frame that was recommended by Missy a few minutes ago.
Let me ask my question in a different way. Because I happen to agree that this is an issue that the town has to face. Is there a reason why this can't be included in this list because of timing or focus or community input or for whatever reason?
Well, Missy, jump back a little bit on that. I mean, I think we've done a lot of work related to single family or neighborhood or residential in order to do the assessment to inform the committee of existing conditions and come forward with recommendations would take longer than the 90-day period that she mentioned earlier.
Chair, if I might suggest, I think we need to move on to the other items on our agenda before we decide on this final list. For a couple of reasons, I think some things might be addressed through the other presentations and our actions.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think the other thing I'm going to say is that last January, we promised to the community that we would go through district planning and we would have resolution last year. We haven't done that. And I'm very concerned about a long list. I'm concerned about all the issues, no doubt about that. Certainly concerned about parking and impact on our residential areas and traffic there. But it takes a while to do this. It's already taken much longer than the community heard us talk about with district planning. So that's why I want us to look at this list more carefully and be realistic about how long this is going to take, because we haven't really talked about exactly how the public engagement is going to work. we haven't included, yes, we talked about the process that's required by statute or by code for the Planning Commission to be involved. What about the Gullah Geechee Land and Cultural Preservation Task Force? What about the Housing Action Committee? So there's a number of steps along the way, and for us to call this long list a quick fix, I think is disingenuous. And that's why I want to suggest that we wait until we address the other items on our agenda to come up with what to include on the quick fix.
Let me take a contrary view. I think we should have a motion to include this list, the DRB aside for a second, because we can eliminate them if we take care of it at the next part of the agenda. So I'm going to rely on staff's opinion that the issue of multifamily is something that they can't handle in the 90-day period. And I would ask for a motion to accept this list as presented.
I would so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
I'll make one more comment. By codifying the process for major developments to go through the Planning Commission, there is some additional protection for the the large multifamily and commercial. So there is another level of protection there that we have until we get the right calibrated code going forward. So
There's a motion and a second. Are there any public comments regarding this particular motion? Seeing none at this time, all those in favor of the motion, please.
Yeah, a comment here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
I'm very short. Jocelyn Steiger, Government Affairs Director for the Hilton Head Area Realtors and the Beaufort Jasper County Realtors. Just wanted to discuss the first two items and it being a quick fix. I have said for a very long time, I know we all keep saying how we've been saying things for a long time, that data needs to drive our decisions and the importance of looking at data. I appreciate emotional and passionate leaders. I'm an emotional and passionate person, but when it comes to governing and really looking at things, we need to set our personal agendas and emotions aside and look at data. I'm hearing from people there's a problem, definitely, but it seems to be parking, which is probably related to occupancy. So again, I would suggest, as I have been saying, unfortunately, for a long time, let's look at our data. We've collected data. We do not have a widespread problem on Hilton Head Island. We have a problem in certain areas. Let's look at those areas and deal with where things are problematic and look at our data. I would like to have something in here or some conversation about data so we make data-driven decisions and not emotional ones. And I'd also like to add, a lot of the people that move to Hilton Head Island, a majority of people, will rent their place part of the year so that someday they can retire here and enjoy the island as a permanent resident. Let's not forget these types of folks. I think we are painting a picture that is a widespread problem, and we don't have a widespread problem. We have problematic areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Are there any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, here we are again. Lisa Cotter, the 2 Abalone property in Tamler's neighbor. I have just a few comments. I didn't plan on talking today. First of all, when you name something quick fix, I think it gives us all the wrong impression. I'm going to suggest that you maybe change that to initial phase or first phase or something. When I hear quick fix, I think you are just going to, get this out. And that doesn't give me a lot of confidence that we're going to get this right. I do have a concern about this 3-month time period. From my understanding, you've been working on this for at least 1.5 years, probably longer. So 3 months, I'm not sure that that's enough time to get it right. And I know you, Tamara, you've said that you've been working on this for so long. You had all the votes, we're ready to pass it, and then a few people fought it. I fought it personally, not because I don't think it's needed. It is very much needed. I 100% agree with that. All these regulations are needed, but we can't just blanket them. We can't just blanket them over the whole island. That is my concern. When you set up rules for the entire island and not look at each zone specifically, that's where the problem comes in. So let's do it. Let's figure it out right. A quick fix, that those words don't give me confidence that we are going to get this right. Thank you.
I have to say, that's a valid observation. Yes, sir. Please.
And I just want to comment, because I have the greatest neighbors ever, but I want you to look across this room. There are representatives across the island who are speaking the same language. And so the problem is island-wide. And so the solutions they're asking for are found within what is being suggested here. So that commonality does suggest that we're on the right track. And I am thrilled to have you as a neighbor.
Please.
Hi, Jim Callan. I have a home on Bradley Circle, 37 Bradley Circle. And I've attended some of these meetings, and you have a very difficult situation, which I appreciate. And the shame of it is we literally have neighbor versus neighbor in very conflicting opinions, and it's just unhealthy and very, very unfortunate. Every neighborhood's different. You know, the neighborhood I'm in has probably been 80% developed, and there's still some development to be left there. But that's far different than a brand new subdivision that could have dozens or hundreds of homes and how that is treated. I think that all needs to be brought into consideration. And lastly, 2 points. One, investment in a property is important. It's, for most Americans, it's the single big investment that they have. And my property here, and I'm fortunate to own some homes outside of Atlanta, is our single biggest investment. And that needs to be considered for people as well in the balance of all this. And lastly, I'll just say, I don't know who these powerful people are, but I'm not powerful. And particularly in this situation, I have almost no power. So other than coming and getting to speak in front of you all, and everybody's very emotional and passionate, and that's right. But we have to balance everybody's needs across the time and what's fair and equitable and the long-term future for the island.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Brian Esposito. I am a home builder on the island. I moved here in 2005. I have 3 kids to go to the school. I'm a part of the community. I'm not just a special interest looking to line my pockets. Personally, I'm a custom home builder. I choose not to build the large vacation short-term rental homes as a personal thing because I think there is an issue. I think we do need to control and address the parking so that, you know, people are able to live in their homes and enjoy our communities. However, the motion that was about to pass was a blanket one-size-fits-all, and it wasn't gonna work. It was gonna kill a project that I've been working on for about 1.5 years for a homeowner that's been vacationing down here for 20 years. They are finally ready to retire. They wanna build a house in a community on the ocean. It would have met the more restrictive FAR requirements. It would not have met the new restrictions of square footage. And for us to just blanket make those changes, we want people to be able to continue to come and retire and enjoy this place. And yes, we do need careful and thoughtful development. We do need to address the clear cutting of neighborhoods like was on Jonesville Road. Yes, those need to be all addressed. We're not, as a builder, I'm not standing against those. There does need to be good development, just like what's made this island great for all those years. So I asked, yes, let's keep going. Let's keep doing this. You're doing good work, but let's not make a mistake and do something that's too restrictive and harms the people that are future residents and our existing residents.
Thank you, Mr. Esposito. Rick, I would like to ask that your comments regard this particular motion. Sir, would you like to address it?
Please. First of all, just a comment. It's hard for me to believe, working in a corporation for 45 years, that the planning committee wasn't involved in the selection of or the development of the list. Seems like you just found out about it. The second thing I'd like to mention is that a single-family residence zone shouldn't be able to have multifamily large box rentals automatically put in it. And the third comment that I would have is I don't know if this list was informed by the survey that apparently everybody took. I don't know what that was. I hope we get to hear the results of that. It seems unusual to me. And lastly, it appears to me that what many people were talking about with these large box rentals, and that's not on the list, and I don't understand why it wasn't made. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Are there any other comments from the public? Seeing none.
Mr. Chair, if not, I have a motion to amend the motion on the floor. I do not want to vote against a list for quick fix. So I move that we table this motion until the end of new business.
So when?
Till the end of new business today, so that we can, because I think the list will be addressed during the next items that we have on our agenda.
Is there a second to that motion? Hearing none, that motion to amend will fail. All those in favor of the motion that was made previously, please signify by raising your hand. The motion fails 3-1.
And I vote no.
Passes.
Yes, motion
fails.
passes. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of amendments to the land management ordinance related to parking, floor area ratio, mass and scale of single-family dwellings. Missy?
So the memo that was included in the packet did try to summarize the history on this particular topic. And I'll back up real quick and speak to the name Quick Fix. And this discussion we're in is called 4A, and all of those items were part of Phase 4. We can call the Quick Fix Phase 4, but what we're trying not to do is to have these splinter amendments and have a 4A, a 4B, a 4C, and to bucket those all into one amendment set. So it's initial set, it could be called Phase 4 again. But where we're picking up off of is what we were calling 4A. Which was the floor area ratio and parking discussion. And it has had a lot of discussions with the Public Planning Committee and Council from June through the end of last year. And what we're really looking for is a discussion about a series of questions to provide further clarity both for staff and our code consultant that hopefully will watch this recording after, and really help us hone in on what are some of the questions we need to answer to further identify the issues, to then go to work and craft the code that we need to address these items. Sorry. So I didn't want to go through some of that recap of that history because I know that you are all very involved in all of that, but wanted to just pick up today with these discussion questions to lead us to how it will inform this Phase 4 fix or quick fix or whatever we may be calling it now. And these questions were identified in the packet, and we hope that they will lead us to, and we'll ask for some very clear direction from the Public Planning Committee on direction to write the code and find the solutions to solve these and bring these forward. So I can drive through these, or Chair, if you would like to, however you would like to lead.
You go ahead, and I think that I would ask the Public Planning Committee members to simply nod or object, but let's not get into a long discussion on each one until we've sort of vetted out them all.
So the questions as written and then are in black, and then the red is staff's attempt at making those just to kind of start the conversation so we don't start from scratch. So the first series is about parking, and the question to the Public Planning Committee was, do you believe that parking is an issue for all single-family homes island-wide? Staff believes that that answer is no, and generally, single-family parking requirements are adequate for single-family dwellings.
Do we agree with that? Please.
So the caveat to that is, yes, as long as they're used as a single-family residence. When the single-family residence comes in for a permit to become a short-term rental, you have a problem.
Correct.
You agree with that?
I agree.
Okay. As long as we have the public here, just a show of, raise your hand. Do you agree with this conclusion? No, single-family parking requirements are adequate for single-family dwellings. Just show your hand. Yeah. Yeah, okay, all right, thank you. I'm just, you're here, I was just looking for your thoughts. Okay, go ahead with the second one, please.
We'll get to that caveat in question number 3, but question number 2 is, do you believe parking is an issue for single-family homes within the planned development communities?
Do we agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that because there are short-term rentals within planned development communities.
Sure.
That's right.
Okay, I would say that I agree with this, the no, because the planned unit developments have architectural review boards that require certain things to happen within their gated communities. So I'm not sure that it's the town's responsibility to dictate that, but I'm willing to hear other opinions.
I'll just expand on what I said, because if you look at Sea Pines and Palmetto Dunes, gated communities, they have major issues with short-term rentals. I respect POAs and ARBs, but generally that has to do with design of homes and square footage of homes, and not so much with parking, and certainly not in certain gated communities with regard to short-term rentals. So I disagree with that statement.
Okay, public, by a show of hands, do you believe, okay.
Just one piece to add to that is that certainly within some of the planned development communities, PD being one of them, through their short-term rental process, they have a requirement that you may only have a certain number of cars parked at any particular homes, and they are very strict in their enforcement. So I do believe that the PUDs have structured themselves to also regulate the short-term rentals, and perhaps one of the reasons those who like to look at the data, and I do like to look at the data, but our statistics are not complete because the PUDs do not report to us. Right. So there's one element that isn't included in the data that you see on in our statistics from the town government. Another is that some of us, myself included, go directly to the homeowner as kind and as patiently, as long-suffering as we possibly can be. So there are a number that aren't included. So just adding that.
Okay.
David, I think it is beyond the scope of the town and this committee to regulate parking within a PUD. It is up to that PUD to regulate that parking. So I agree with the answer, no.
Okay. The question to the public is, do you agree with the answer no? Please show your hands. If you don't agree, show your hands.
And the bride and the groom side.
So we don't have clear direction on number 2. Go ahead to number 3, please.
Okay. Do you believe parking is an issue for single-family homes that are short-term rentals? And staff said yes, short-term rentals do cause some parking issues when potential occupancy levels are high, and that the single-family parking requirements that are existing are adequate for single-family use, but are not calibrated correctly for those single-family structures that are also high occupancy short-term rentals.
Does anybody on the dais disagree with that answer?
I disagree with the second sentence. I think it's too complex to try to understand. I agree with the first sentence.
But, so I made my comment.
Yeah, okay. All right. So the question to the public is, do you agree with the answer yes? that single-family owns short-term rentals, so on and so forth?
Yes.
By show of hands. Okay. Against the answer, yes. All right, thank you very much. Let's go on to number 4.
So the next series of questions is related to the mass and scale or a floor area ratio.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? I saw the staff report, I saw these questions in there, but my question for the committee is, what are we going to do next after we talk about these questions? Because I think we ought to separate the issues of parking, mass, and scale if we're going to talk about them more.
I think we are.
So my question then is, why are we going to talk about mass and scale questions now without talking about what do we do about parking first? I can't juggle with both hands. I can't juggle 3 balls at the same time.
The objective of, if I may.
I'm going to suggest that we go through the full list and then deal with the agenda as you've prepared it.
Okay. So the next series of questions are related to floor area ratio or mass and scale for single family. And item 1 is, do you believe mass and scale of single family homes is an issue island-wide? The staff response was no, it's not an issue everywhere, but it does become an issue when large homes are built on small lots throughout the island, or large homes do not conform to the neighborhood pattern or character.
Comments from the dais?
So the second part of the statement is correct. No, it's not an issue everywhere. Of course, it's not an issue everywhere. But it does become an issue is the important part of the comment.
Yes.
For instance, we ran into a lovely couple at a function on Sunday last week. The woman did not know who she was talking to. She doesn't know me from anyone else that she would have randomly sat next to. She lives behind a gate, and it just happened to start talking about her home and her property. And she was so nervous and so anxious, she bought the land next to her. It sounded very familiar to my own story. And she did so because she was petrified about what type of home would be built next to her, because she saw what was being built around her. And so anywhere, it can become a problem. And so everyone on the island can be subject to the issues that we're discussing here today.
Yeah, I think I remember correctly, Missy, FARs, if the town were to adopt them, would not apply within the gates, behind the gates? We don't.
As it was drafted, yes, that was correct.
All right, point well taken. All right, so I guess it's pretty clear that it's not an island-wide, but it could become an issue. Patsy?
I'm okay with that.
I don't know how we ask this question because it seems sort of self-evident, so I'm not going to ask it of the public. Let's go to number 5.
Do you believe the mass and scale of single-family homes is an issue within the planned development communities? Staff's response was no, generally the lot size and scale of homes are appropriately sized in those communities.
Comments?
No.
I think we need that caveat about STRs again.
Question to the public, do you agree with the answer no, that mass and scale of single-family home is an island-wide issue?
I want to answer this question, if I may. When somebody's putting in to build new, how would you know if it's an STR or not?
We don't.
That keeps being the qualifier, and I just had that question.
Okay, thank you. Is there a raised hand to agree on that answer? No. It's complicated. Okay, let's move on to the next, please.
Do you believe mass and scale of single-family homes is an issue for new development or existing single-family development? Staff said both. Newer single-family subdivisions and newer redevelopments on existing lots tend to have higher floor area ratios, but new development is what can be addressed by code changes.
I would agree with that, except for I think you need to limit that to the land management code and not the municipal code.
That's over my head.
Well, there's several things that are included in the municipal code that can apply, and in addition to that, there's building code requirements. So you've got to define code.
Any other comments here?
I agree with this conclusion.
Ask the public, do you agree with this, the answer both regarding this matter? Show of hands.
Sorry, can you put it on the screen? We're not seeing that on the screen.
Yeah, it's number 3.
It's number 3. Yeah, I think the chair was referring to the numbering system in the staff report, which is different from the numbering system on the screen. That may be some source of confusion.
No answer on that one. Okay, go to the next.
Okay, well, this is the loaded one. Do you believe mass and scale of single-family homes should be uniform standard, applied island-wide, or calibrated by neighborhood type or zoning district? And staff's response is that it should be calibrated by the neighborhood type or within the context of the existing or desired development patterns. We do have existing floor area ratios within 3 overlay districts of Forest Beach, Valleyfield, and Holiday Homes. And then staff has also been doing research, as we've previously discussed, on FAR data and analysis within the Islands Beach neighborhoods, Jonesville and Mitchellville neighborhood areas as well. So this question is really to get at how we might create some solutions. And is it a uniform application, or is it something that's calibrated? And if it is calibrated, then where are we going to focus? What neighborhoods would we apply this?
Okay, does anyone disagree with this?
So this is one of those that I think is a question that deserves a lot more thought, because it doesn't really ask you a question about today's situation. If you're talking about zoning districts, we don't have any distinction that really relates to this mass and scale in zoning districts today. So if you're talking about future districting, district plans, that's different, and that disturbs what people have already bought and built into, right? So that's bothersome, and there's a lot about district plans that I find bothersome. And so I've said this several times, and people know that, and I'll be watching and paying very close attention to what happens to neighborhoods with regard to district plans. So should there be a uniform standard applied island-wide? There are, this is just one that I really need a lot more time to have a discussion around. There are areas that don't have any protection whatsoever, right?
I think you bring up a good point, because zoning isn't done neighborhood by neighborhood. And you're used the word neighborhood here. So I think it's much more granular than zoning.
Correct.
Okay.
So that was just to, we don't know how it may be calibrated, but something other than a uniform standard. Is it going to be calibrated within these existing overlay areas or within existing neighborhood geographies, neighborhood types, subdivision level, so those areas. And so I think it's answering that first question, and then based on that, we can dive into application of what those areas are, if the answer is that it's not a uniform application island-wide.
Okay, I think we agree on that. Yeah, okay. You asked a couple of questions specifically to this. FAR amendments, where will FAR be applied? Existing overlay districts or other locations island-wide, or only in specific areas at this time? I'm going to step out and say that we should not be looking at island-wide at this time. As a matter of fact, I think we have to be very careful in this regard. But I'll open it up to the rest of.
I am troubled by island-wide rules, restrictions, ordinances, and so forth as a quick fix. We have to understand how each one of these affects other ordinances, other laws, other uses that are ongoing. And so I'm very uncomfortable with that in terms of an island-wide response.
Here, I'm confused. Are we still dealing with question 4, or is there a new question that you're reading?
You know, we've moved on. We got an answer on question 4.
And so what's the question that you were addressing? Because I don't have a copy of it.
Well, I think we are moving into the area where we want to address the two issues that have been before us in November and so on, the FAR situation and the parking situation.
Okay. So are you asking for what we ought to do about these two separate situations?
I think, yes, we are being asked by the public, at least some portions of the public, to address the FAR situation, in particular in my case, because it's in my ward, in the Forest Beach area. But also the parking issue regarding STRs. So I think based on the conversations that we've been having, it would be good for us to make some decisions regarding, if we are able to today, to make some decisions regarding an FAR in my area, particularly in Forest Beach, and have a conversation around parking requirements for STRs.
In that case, I move to recommend that the town council amend section 16-3-106H4D for the Forest Beach Neighborhood Character Overlay District to reduce the floor area ratio from 0.55 to 0.45, and the maximum square footage be reduced from 5,000 square feet to 4,500 square feet, so that the language in the first sentence reads as follows. The maximum gross floor area is limited to 0.45 times the area of the lot containing a single-family residence up to a maximum of 4,500 square feet. And I have given a copy of this to the clerk, except for I recognize I had a typo in that last sentence. So it should be 0.45 in both places.
I'll second that motion.
And was there a reduction in the square footage in your motion?
Yes, correct, from 5,000 to 4,500 to make it consistent with the fractional numbers.
Yeah, I know that we sent a letter out to the appropriate parties in Forest Beach addressing the 0.45, but not the 5,000. I have not been asked to reduce that number by my constituents who I've been talking to. So I am not in favor of reducing that, the 5,000 to 4,500, but I am in favor of reducing the 2.045. So I would make an amendment to your motion to exclude the reduction of the 5,000 square feet, 5,500 to 5,000. Is there a second to that?
I would second that. There's been no input from the community about that, and I didn't realize that when I seconded the primary motion.
Okay.
Here, I know we have representatives from the community here. I'd like to hear from them before we vote on the motion.
Fine.
I think we need a clarification that I think all this committee can do is recommend that to the full town council.
And that's what.
To make it clear to the public that if we approve this, it is not changing the rules.
Are we in discussion? Have we had a first and a second?
Yes, we did have a first and second on the amendment.
And so there's discussion going back. I just want to make it perfectly clear that this motion and all of this other discussion that apparently has been taking place, I was not a party of, or party to. And so therefore, this separating out individual communities when this is an island-wide issue leaves some communities with substantial concerns and long-standing problems out in the cold.
No, we can talk about that.
Yeah,
On this
I'm
issue.
just making it perfectly clear and on the record that all of this behind this lack of transparency in my mind of conversation, this committee member was not a party to.
I called you yesterday and I didn't get a response.
Well, it sounds like you were on the record. Thank you.
Are you open to?
Yes, we are open to the particular motion to amend to include just the reduction of 0.5 to 0.55 to 0.45
Also the square footage.
and not include the square footage. Yes, ma'am.
So I still.
You want to?
Usually loud now, but okay. So. Your name? My name is Patricia Courtney. We keep talking about adjusting floor ratio, and then the prior question I asked about STRs, so I think at least the floor ratio gets the fact that we're trying to keep, I'll call them McMansions for lack of better words, we're trying to keep McMansions down. But I think one of the things that's not in this floor area ratio that we saw, at least in Palmetto Dunes, is the issue is you're still allowing somebody to build, if it's 4,500 square foot house, and they can choose to still put 8 bedrooms in the house. Your floor average ratio does not go into the number of bedrooms. And maybe we should be doing something along like an in-law, meaning the in's like you go to, not a mother-in-law, where a house that is being built, and this covers whether it's long-term rental, secondary home, anything, a house that is being built for the future that will have more than X amount of bedrooms must have a resident, like an inn does, or bed and breakfast does, or a hotel does, 24/7 on site to control some of these problems. I think we're getting away from what we're trying to solve by having the McMansions with the 10 bedrooms. And that's what we're trying to solve, I think. And if we start looking at putting something like an in-law over a certain amount of bedrooms requires a residential in place person, that might cure some of our problems that we're having. The other thing that we might also look at doing when we keep talking about individual neighborhoods, and Tamara, you helped us with this it was a business versus residence with the driving range, but other areas ask for a variance and a public hearing when something is being built over a particular size. And all the neighbors within like 1,000 feet get a notice of when this public hearing is going on. This would work great for what I'm hearing with Hickory Cove. They get a notice, there's a public hearing, and you get their feedback. So you get that particular one plot that had one house that's now getting 10 houses that are all coming up 7 bedrooms, where the area can only really hold 4 bedrooms. You're now getting the constituents involved in helping the discussion of could it really hold the 7 houses with 7 bedrooms, or maybe it needs to be 5 houses with 4 bedrooms, and there's a community involvement in it. We're trying to solve just on square footage, and I don't think that's an answer to it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Please, Melinda, and please speak to this particular motion.
Sure. Melinda Tanner, Palmetto Hall. How did we move from talking about general questions to a motion about a specific area? I literally don't get it. And what about the other areas? So you're making a special call for your constituencies without allowing other people to do that as well or be prepared for it. It just seems like the process isn't working. And where's the public notice?
Thank you. I'm not excluding other conversations.
I have a
in this
list of
regard.
motions.
Yes, ma'am.
I do agree on the public notice. There needs to be a notice to the people that this is going on. I just happened to luckily find out about this. And so when it's questioned why there aren't residents here supporting these issues, why there's only developers, it's because the public doesn't know about it. We do need public notice. But to address this specific issue, again, I feel like, are we back at the same point we were while why we were fighting this before. Do we know, like, I'm glad we're talking about one area at a time, but do we know whether this includes heated or unheated space? Do we know whether this includes sheds, covered places? Does it include the screened-in ports? So these were the questions we wanted to get the details to last time. And I don't know, maybe those details, maybe Misty does have those details, but we're still not hearing them. So if we could hear those details, that would be good.
Okay, I will answer that. Nothing is changing within the agreements that are already adopted by the Forest Beach area. Nothing's changed there. The only thing that is being proposed in this particular motion is the reduction of square footage, the FA.
But that was still a question last time. What does that square footage include? Does it include sheds? Does it include screened-in porches? Remember, we had...
Whatever the Forest Beach Owners Association and the covenants and restrictions that they adopted back in the 70s hasn't changed.
Okay, so those are just things as we look at the other neighborhoods that we need to know. Those are the details that the public wants to know so we can help you guys make informed decisions.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Daly?
Hello, I'm Jack Daly, Forest Beach. Yes, so we made 3 points. We had been following this process. We learned about it. We reached out to Missy. Missy was nice enough to meet with us. We got up out of our neighborhood and came to town to talk about these things and just have our different feelings heard on this. So you have to get out there and advocate for yourself. So Missy had a meeting with us. Then she sent us a long history of the different motions. We didn't know it had gone down to 3-2, then back to 4-5. There looked like there was a cap and there wasn't. So we had a meeting and all of our board was there, and pretty much all of our board. And we agreed that 0.45 was reasonable. We agreed on a 5,000 square foot cap, which was something from our overlay district already. It was not certain that there was a cap in there the way we read the summary, but we felt like we should put that in there. We also felt like there should be a delayed effective date or a grandfathering in for perhaps someone who just bought a lot or a house, and that was predicated on a 0.55 FAR, and suddenly they are in a different situation. I'm no code writer. I don't know how that works, what works, effective date, grandfathering, how grandfathering really works in those kind of situations. But those are the 3 things we came up with, and we had different people from different aspects disagree, but we came together on those. And so that's just a clarification of those 3 items where we were. And we thank Missy for helping us in the process and explaining a lot of things, especially the details of what's included and what's not included.
Thank you, Mr. Daly.
Thank you.
Let me make a comment. When this committee met on November 9th, these same discussions were taken up, but no motion was taken. So what I am trying to do is take action on those motions that were made back in November. If we aren't prepared to do that today, then we'll simply postpone this conversation. It has to do with the FAR in the Forest Beach area, and it has to do with the STR parking issue that Ms. Bryson suggested back in November.
And also in October.
Okay, point well taken. So, Missy?
I just wanted to give an update. We did reach out to the other POAs within Forest Beach and did hear back from the other 2 verbally. And one of them was amenable to a 0.45 reduction, and the other one had more concerns about pedestrian safety that were higher priorities than adjusting the FAR. So, but we did reach out. We also met with Folly Field, and they were comfortable with their existing overlay regulations and have not heard that Holiday Homes would like to make any changes to their overlay district as well.
David, we have a motion on the table, and we've had public discussion.
Okay, the motion that to amend the motion was the reduction of 0.55 to 0.45 in the Forest Beach area and remaining silent on the reduction of square footage.
That's the way I understand it.
Those in favor of amending the motion, please raise your right hand.
If Hollyfield is in agreement, I'm in agreement. Did I say Follyfield? My
You
floor
did.
speech is what I did mean to say.
Okay. All right, that motion passes. So the motion now the broader motion is to reduce the FAR in the Forest Beach area from 0.55 to 0.45.
That's a recommendation to council.
Yes. All those in favor of that motion, raise your right hand. Okay, that passes, okay. All right, now, there are other areas that are affected, and committee members, please speak up.
So are we still talking about the floor area ratio?
We are.
Not parking again, just to make sure, okay? I had a motion to reduce the FAR in Follyfield neighborhood. And so I'm going to put that motion on the floor and see if there's support for it and comments about it. And then I had a separate motion about other areas, but I want to wait until we get back to the quick fix list. So with that having said, I move to recommend that the town council amend section 16-3-106 I-4E for the Follyfield Neighborhood Character Overlay District to reduce the floor area ratio from 0.45 to 0.32, and the maximum square footage be reduced from 4,500 to 4,000 square feet, so that the language in the first sentence reads as follows. The maximum gross floor area is limited to 0.32 times the area of the lot containing a single-family dwelling up to a maximum of 4,000 square feet. This was another area that we identified as needing a quick fix.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion? Hearing none.
Well, can I ask a question before there's, is this an area, in your statement just before, you mentioned that you had reached out to Follyfield. Have you had a conversation with the president and the board at Follyfield?
Yes.
And their representative is here?
Yes, and I also had a conversation with them. They do not want to lose their FAR, but they're okay with reducing it. But I think if we have more questions, we could ask the representative.
Discussion purposes only. I'm willing to second.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the dais in this matter? Sir, would you like to come forward and address this matter?
How are you? Carol Stern, Follyfield. Excuse me. I think that's something that we'd have to bring back to our membership. The one thing that our membership didn't want to lose was the cap. So in previous conversations, there was a proposal that we would lose the cap. Right now, we have a cap of 4,500 square feet. That's critical to our area. So we definitely do not want to lose that. I would have to bring it back to our membership. We're having the AGM at the end of this month. I can bring it to the membership and ask the membership to vote on 0.32 and come back to this committee.
It would be your desire that we hold off until another meeting before we proceed.
That'd be fine. Mr. Chair, I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Would you like to address any further issues on FAR?
Well, yes, I would. There are other areas that, Missy, you mentioned that you had also reached out to Holiday Homes and that you had not heard back from them with regard to anything else. Has there been other discussion with Holiday Homes? Do you have something that you're prepared with Holiday Homes?
No,
Okay.
no.
Then I would like to, hi, Sean. Do you have something with regard to Holiday Homes?
Well, no, but Sean Collins, if I can jump in. Staff has done a lot of assessment of the communities that Missy had mentioned. And I think maybe rather than go through each community here by referendum, if we can bring that assessment to you to show you the existing conditions on floor area ratio, and then have that discussion give us an opportunity to make sure that the folks that are in those communities know that will be discussed at an upcoming meeting. I think having that would be helpful. Even the Folly Field neighborhood, the 0.45 to 0.32, I'd want the committee to have the benefit to know existing condition, what the FAR is based on what's been built over time and here recently, to make that recommendation. Because the recommendations that are coming out here are very clear. Thank you for that. But I think we need to have the benefit of the data, we've heard it, to base that decision on. So if that makes sense.
Thank you.
But just following up to answer your question, I would like to suggest for those areas that don't have an HOA, who you would have been able to reach out to, for instance, the Jonesville area or the Bradley Circle area or Bradley Beach area, there's no one to coordinate with. And therefore, and these other areas have overlay districts. I'd like to recommend and suggest that there's a discussion that's begun to outline what an overlay district would look like in those areas and get community input for those neighborhoods to see what protections could be put in place and what's best to preserve the communities, understand the needs of the communities, and to look what's best to contain escalating growth, but also the community character.
Okay.
And
Mr.
hopefully
Chairman,
that will satisfy the folks who currently live there and what plans they might have.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there's nothing on the table, on the dais, for us to vote on at this point. Staff has offered to come back with a detailed presentation on the issue. I think we should move on.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm prepared to move on.
I would like to move on too, but I would like those areas without those HOAs.
Yeah, I was going to.
Okay, please do.
Before we move on, I would like, if we're going to come back with more research, and we have been researching beach communities, Jonesville area and Mitchellville, I would like to
And
get
Bradley Circle,
confirmation.
Bradley Beach area.
They're included in the beach communities, yes. But I want to make sure that if we are going to come back with more information, that I have confirmation that those are the areas that you would like that additional FAR research. And I can say that we've done a much deeper dive in the data set and have a lot more granular detail on FAR, even subdivision by subdivision within broader geographies that will be really beneficial to direct this discussion and find solutions that are appropriate.
And part of that is the staff reaching out to residents in these various communities to let them know this is ongoing.
Correct.
Thank you, Missy.
Mr. Chair, I'm fine with that. The one thing I would ask when you provide us with your research is a copy of subdivision plats so that we can see lot sizes,
Okay,
recorded subdivision plats.
okay.
Okay, moving on, the second item that we addressed in the November meeting was the parking issue. And Ms. Bryson brought up the idea that a parking standard be, for short-term rentals, be a part of the permit. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, at the October and November meeting of the committee. And at this point, I'm prepared to make a formal motion. I've provided a copy to the town clerk, and I've sent copies individually, not as a group, to each committee member. So with that being said, I move to recommend that the town council amend section 10-2-50D of the municipal code of the town of Hilton Head Island, as shown on the attached copy of the section with amended language shown by tracking. And thank you to the clerk for showing this. The recommended parking spaces must comply with the chart set out below in the subsection 2. That list found in I under subsection 2 was the list approved by this committee and approved by the town council on a 7-0 vote. What I did was just collapse the charts. And that wasn't a part of the long motion explanation. So that 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 bedrooms, based on their square footage, you'll see the number of parking spaces. And then in order to address the impervious surface question, at least 75% of the areas for parking of more than 4 vehicles must be improved with an impervious surface, provided However, no more than 10% of the total of the front, side, and rear yards of the premises may be used for parking spaces. And that is to address the concern about folks parking all over the front yard or side yard in order to address the parking requirements. And this regulations apply during the lease and prior to the issuance of any short-term rental permit. So addressing several things. One is only addressing it to 4 bedrooms up to 8 bedrooms, so that 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms are not included, and also addressing the time at which the compliance is required, the percentage of the property, percentage of the parking which must be impervious, and also meaning that you don't park all over the yard. So that's my motion to make that amendment to section 10-250D of the municipal code. It is not in the LMO.
Is there a second to that?
A second for discussion.
We'll open it up to the dais for discussion.
Thoughts, for instance?
I'm concerned that the scope of this change has not been fully vetted by the community or by the staff. And so I'm concerned about its breadth. I understand the idea that we're trying to control parking and that there have been abuses in some short-term rental properties. But I'm concerned about the extent of it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Patsy, these square footage figures and parking space requirements came from the document that was presented from the parking go-round a few months ago. So it came from that data. This is directly from that. So it is something that staff has gone through and through their good work, presented to us and was actually voted on 7-0, having gone first through, I believe, Planning Commission, through this committee unanimously, and also through Town Council unanimously. So the information has been consistent. The only concern, well, there are a number of concerns, but the biggest concern that I have, and I left you a message because I did receive your email on this, is that the 10%, for those of y'all who don't know, some of the lot sizes that that are built on are only 40 feet wide. So if you have a double driveway going in, you're 20 feet minimally going in, and so that 10% becomes problematic. So that's difficult, and I say that very much acknowledging that we do not want people parking all over the front and sides of the properties, and we do see that happening. So I don't know what the fix to that is, but the 10% doesn't work.
I'm sympathetic to this direction. I have 2 questions, though. One, Missy, do I recall that this would not apply to PUDs, or it would apply to PUDs? There was something about parking either being in the PUDs or not being in the PUDs.
Well, what is on the screen here is applicable to the short-term rental ordinance, and so it applies to all short-term rentals island-wide. So it would apply to the PUDs that are short-term rentals. And while the calibration of parking was included in an amendment set, that was an amendment to the LMO, and it was not applied in the short-term rental ordinance. So in this application, staff hasn't reviewed this particular language.
Mr. Chair, I shared it with the town manager last Thursday, and after that discussion, made some revisions with regard to the impervious surface and sent him those revisions. So the town manager was furnished with this. I can't remember if it was Sunday or Monday.
And my second comment would be that the 75% and the 10% are perhaps very accurate, but I have no idea at this moment how vetted they are and whether or not they work or don't work. So,
Good.
Please.
Almost good afternoon. So generally, I believe the motion is that, I'm not paraphrasing Councilwoman Bryson, but generally, the motion is to address address parking under the short-term rental permit and not the LMO. So the LMO parking calibration that we brought you for single-family homes, we wouldn't touch the LMO, but it would be addressed through short-term rental. So I think if that's the motion with this as a guide that we can vet with our code writer and bring back to you a final version, and maybe exactly like this, we would like to do that, bring back to this committee for approval. So we're trying to get direction, and I think the direction is to work to address this in the short-term rental.
I'm in support of moving it forward, but not under the specifics that we have here today. So if you're suggesting that we can move it forward for vetting, so on, that's fine.
That's exactly right, because I'm sure there's people behind me that want to have the benefit to understand it and then share their thoughts before recommending to council.
I think it's really important to get PUD input, feedback on this, because it applies 100% over the board. But so would you amend your motion to include what he's saying?
Can you bring it back next week? I'm gonna ask. We can have a special meeting. I think it's time we did something. We've talked about this in full since August. So I'm sorry to share a little of my frustration, but I'm looking at the facts. These are the facts. We adopted this with regard to the number of spaces per bedroom in August. It was a 3-to-1 vote. I remember Mr. Stanford was about to leave and he didn't get to see the exact language, so, but it was unanimous before the town council. So I'd only be willing to think about it if we can have it at our next meeting, and I want to know how soon that can happen. Because
I would have to get back to you on the time frame. As I mentioned, our code writer, we just signed the contract.
well, all due respect, a code writer, if they're going to improve the way this was done, it's only going to be with regard to percentage and numbers.
I'll leave it to the committee to weigh in and share their direction on the motion that's in
We want to
front.
get some more data on the percentage of the areas of parking, and what has to be impervious and what part of the yard. I'm okay with that, as long as it is an extremely short amount of time, because that's an extremely short amount of patience I have.
What's
And
the
I
next
believe the
meeting?
community as well has that short amount of patience.
What's our next regular scheduled meeting?
Second Thursday in February.
Oh, that's
February 8th, I believe.
I would support the motion moving forward with a couple of caveats. The percentages that Ms. Bryson just said, that the PUD managers are aware of this, and that a small representative group of STR owners or managers be invited by staff to sit down and look at what is being proposed. With those 3 items, I'm prepared to vote in favor of this, to move it forward for a review next month PPC meeting.
No, because, and here's, I appreciate you're trying to be inclusive in getting input, but you've only named PUDs and short-term rental folks. And as my colleague, Ms. Becker, has pointed out, there are a lot of folks that don't live within PUDs, and they need to have input as well.
That's fine.
And so I think instead, to give a time limit to all those who want to have input, 2 weeks before our next meeting or something, and if staff wants to consult various folks in various areas. But it's the folks specifically in non-PUDs who have been suffering for years. And that's my concern with that
Okay,
approach.
so without being able to summarize the motion, my being able to summarize the motion, basically what we are doing is moving this forward with the appropriate review by the public and to have it come back to the PPC at the February meeting. Is that correct?
I would go along with that reluctantly, as long as it's by that meeting, and we take action.
If that's an amendment to the motion, is there a second?
Can you restate the motion fully? Sorry, I've got to get it for the record.
Well, and I'm sorry, but I really need to jump in. So staff worked to address with some code changes. They were to the LMO. We brought that through a process. It reached sort of an end and was sort of sent back to committee. This is brand new direction to go into the short-term rental from, it's brand new direction as a committee if you support it, to direct staff to go this route. I don't know if Missy and the team can deliver a code change to the short-term rental ordinance, vetting it through stakeholders that you've mentioned, and bring it back to you in February. What I can commit to is we can get as far as we can and bring you an update. But I'm not ready to say with certainty, knowing that we have really 2 weeks to be able to vet it. So if we have internal review and sending it out in a packet, so the community, let alone the committee, has time to review it. The February 8th deadline for me, is a little problematic.
Mr. Chair, I apologize for my extraordinary lack of patience at the moment, but can we just do a press release and say the committee's going to consider this at the February meeting, and speak now or forever hold your peace? Okay.
May I ask you formally, what is the process to amend the short-term rental ordinance?
Well, short-term rental permit is within the Muni Code, and I believe it's an ordinance change, 2 readings of council. I live mostly in the LMO, which is a subset of the municipal code. This is a different chapter, but municipalities adopt changes to ordinance by 2 readings of council.
Okay, let's bring this to a vote. Your points made that staff may not be able to get back to us within 1 month. The motion, I think what Ms. Bryson is saying is she wants it back in a month. So if there's a second to amend it the way we've been talking, then we can vote on that.
I'm not quite sure I know what we're voting on and what we're seeking a second on. Is it to move this to come back to PPC in a month?
In a month. Yeah,
subject to staff review?
Yes.
Community review.
And what I'm hearing is staff may not be able to deliver. That's what I'm hearing. So, all right.
I'll make that second.
Okay, if we can make the motion, state the motion, please.
I'll see if I can try. So to amend the motion on the floor, that.
Which was?
The one to amend section 10-2-50.
With the
all that
stuff on the screen.
The stuff on the
Okay.
screen. Provided that the vote on the amendment be scheduled for the February meeting of the PPC.
Provided that the vote of the
On
amendment?
the amendment considered at the February blank meeting of the PPC. Is that okay with a second?
I think that's accurate, and I do second that.
Any further discussion on council? Okay, I did see one hand that went up here.
Melissa Robin, standing too close. I'd like to know if in the proposal of requesting that 75% be impervious with more than 4 vehicles if you all had the benefit of seeing some design sketches. You know, in a beach community, it's pretty common to have like crushed shells, crushed stone. Personally, I don't love asphalt, and I just want to make sure that you all understand the visual of what that could look like. I'm all for limiting the parking, don't get me wrong, it's just the issue of impervious.
Thank you. Sir?
So specifically on this, and I have a home.
Your name?
Jim Callen, Bradley Circle. I have a very small short-term rental property there. I just did my short-term rental permit. It's a question, comment. I thought there was already things in place because I had to go up on a digital map and it was defined a parking space was 9 feet by 18 feet and defined how many parking spaces I had. I had to define where my trash was. I assumed there was already something in place that was based on the number of bedrooms I have, the square footage I had, and that definition of a parking space that was in. I had to provide all that as part of a short-term rental permit. So question, comment, that's all I have.
Thank you, sir.
Jim, the difference is that I don't believe that what you had to fulfill was related to square footage or bedrooms.
Ma'am?
You could be right, but it specifically said, like, number of bedrooms and square footage, and then
Thank you.
asking that.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just want to pop one quick thing about the short-term rental and the parking. Pam
I-
Franklin.
Your name and speak into the microphone, please.
Pam Franklin, Cordella Parkway. As far as short-term rentals, and just piggybacking on this woman's comments about you don't know when they build, when they buy. I think that we have to have clear-cut regulations for short-term rental properties. I was a short-term rental property. I am no longer a short-term rental property. I've owned other short-term rental properties up at the Jersey Shore. So I come at you from both sides of the coin. But I think we need clear-cut guidelines on what it means for short-term rentals, what the regulations are for short-term rental properties. When someone is coming to buy on this island, when someone is coming to build on this island, I think it's the responsibility of the rental agent or how they're buying stated right there that if you choose to use this as an STR, you must comply with X. If you choose to use this as a single family dwelling, then you comply with Y. X and Y do not overlap. This is what this means. So in relationship to you don't know how many bedrooms, you don't know this, you don't know that, if it's clear and it's cut and it's concise, we will know. And as far as the parking being an issue, I happen to have a very generous driveway. My neighbors that live on Hickory Lane that are permanent residents have often had little dinner parties. They have high schoolers, whatever. They have often said to me, hey, could we park in your driveway because we don't have enough space? These are permanent residents that are asking me. Okay, they're complying with, let's not park on the street, let's not park on the lawn, let's not overcrowd this area. Why is this so difficult? I just don't understand. We don't need, I go back to, a tragedy to occur by having way too many cars. I have 4 kids, they have significant others. If we all drove down here, we could have 9 cars, and yes, I could fit 9 cars. Again, I'm fortunate, but at the end of the day, 9 vehicles, think about that. That's just for my personal family, and you're talking about rentals.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to have to call a time on this issue because we're after lunch and we have a significant other part of the agenda to go on. So I'm going to call the question. Members of council, please raise your right hand if you support the motion. Thank you very much. It passes. All right. I hate to do this, but let's just take a quick 5-minute break. 5 minutes, so that you can stretch your legs. The next section is very important, and I The next item on the agenda is the introduction of the Town of Hilton Head Island Conditions and Trends Assessment Report by Missy Lou, Director of Planning. I want to make just a quick comment. This is the first time that I think our town has taken an in-depth look at a number of significant elements of the community and presented it in a way that if you take the time to read through it, you begin to understand how one area of the community affects another area. And we're beginning to have the data that will allow council to make policy that makes more sense, but also for the portion of the community that wants to read the detail of the conditions and trends assessment, they will begin to understand the complexity of the issues that we are engaged in trying to address. So Missy, go ahead, and thank you very much, and to the consultants for doing a stellar job. We are here today to receive information and not much beyond that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I wanted to first start with, yes, we've had a consultant team and we've been working on this project for about 2 years. But also our project lead, Katie Kabala, who has helped us get this document to here today, has been instrumental in many document reviews and analyzing these 140 pages of data. And it's a very information-rich report and requires a lot of attention to detail. And I just want to thank Katie for all of her hard work leading that and bringing it for you to review today. So this is just an introduction, as Councilman Ames mentioned, and we will have this before you in February with a resolution at that time. So we want to hear, we're going to go over kind of a really brief and broad overview of the document. As an introduction, we're going to talk about how the document is already being used and how we will use it, and then talk about some next steps. Overall, the purpose is it's a data report. It's a lot of data. It gives us some of that baseline data on 10 topic areas, and it's a way to assemble and organize that data that then we will actively be using that in a variety of our implementation programs that are in our strategic action plan. The data should, if you take a look at it, identify what those trends are on a number of those topic areas. And it's a supplemental document to the data and information that's in our plan, our comprehensive plan. And hopefully the information is organized in an easy to read format that is broken into the 10 topic clusters or topic areas. And is presented in an understandable fashion. The document does have a link to all of those data sets, and it's a 60 or 70 page Excel reference background information. And so it is very distilled graphically for the community to understand that data. And hopefully we talked about the need to make data-driven decisions as a community, and that this document will be one of the resource tools that we will all look to do just that. And then as we consider how we'll apply the information and data, it really is for future conversations on what does this data and information tell us and how do we want to apply it as a community in future policies and in the LMO work that we're just talking about, in our district plans. And so it has a lot of applications that we are currently using the information and data for, and how we plan to continue to use the information and data. So how did we do the work? We started with defining what this project was, and then we outlined what those topic areas were, and then sent the consultant team to work to catalog and collect a variety of data sets and then analyze them through strategic analysis and try to assemble it into a format that can be digested. And then we're at step 4 today, which is sharing and integrating that information for public review and comment. So that's kind of the process that we have done. this slide is not showing the 10 topic areas like it should. But there are 10 topic areas that this report analyzes, and it includes demographics, workforce, economics, real estate, environment, housing, governance, engagement, systems, and land use. And so there are key community snapshot information and detailed analysis from those key topic areas. So overall, this assessment is that benchmark and statistical information to evaluate and assess the overall health of the community within those topic clusters. And so the findings identify those major trends, and I think it's going to be used as a building block for town leadership to make those decisions going forward. And I think it will provide that direction that we need as we go into districts and this LMO overhaul to inform future community plans, community development strategies, public policies, and those strategic actions that would result from those. So the objective was to provide this information based on what we thought were the key topics and clusters in 2023 when it was written, and that this would be used as a tool, just another tool that we have, another document on the shelf that is very information rich. Oh, I didn't know I had to do that. So I guess there's one question on, how is this going to be applied? And I wanted to make sure that, the application of this information can be communicated today, but, and one of those is in land use, and real briefly that we have been using it in some of our district planning work, and wanted to just kind of showcase how that can be applied. But we just did complete an internal staff-led 2-day workshop this week on our districts, and I can tell you that all of the information within all the topic clusters can be also organized by the spatial boundaries of those districts. And so when we think about each of those 8 planning districts and who's there, so what are the demographics, who works there, do they commute there, or do they live within that district, and a variety of other information. We have the business information, and a lot of land use information related to the age of structures and vulnerability or susceptibility to change, the acreage of vacant parcels, and underdeveloped parcels. And we can utilize all that information as we go into that planning work and take it further than what it is as presented in the conditions and trends. Also from how the data will be used, we have applied it already to what will be coming to you next month, the housing impact analysis. So information from both the housing and the real estate chapters were then further analyzed to put together that document, that housing analysis. And then there's a number of other variety of ways that we can utilize the information and will be. And I think if you read the information, it really unearths a lot of information, some obvious, some not so obvious information that should inform how we grow as a community. And just within one of the topic clusters, as an example, the population, if you look at just the statistic, it shows that our population is plateaued and that it is not increasing. But, and so that's occurred over the last 20 years. But within that information, the makeup of the population has changed quite a bit. Families with children have decreased by 35%. African-American population has decreased by 15%. The Hispanic population grew by 28%. And the share of residents over the age of 65% increased by 37%. At the same time, the average household size decreased to 2.2 people. Visitors to the island grew significantly within that timetable. In the past 5 years, the number of visitors grew to almost 20%. And with an increased average resident age on the island and a population that's interested in aging in place, that could inform some future strategic directions for the town. So just looking at the data and analyzing how we might apply that, how we might look at that in some of our work is what we're doing. Another area that we looked at very closely when we put the document together was the housing information data. And we had quite a bit of discussion on that. And we've had a discussion today about short-term rentals, and that there is, the data does show us that there is an increase in the conversion of housing to short-term rentals, and that the island has both a larger number of existing housing stock that's affordable, both protected and naturally occurring affordable housing, and that it noted that we have 3,600 long-term rental units on the island, and right now about over half of those 2,000 are deemed affordable. And so within that information, it then gives us what is the average rent on Hilton Head, and the average rent is lower than you would expect. But that's because a lot of those are long-term rentals and they don't come up on the market. So we had a deep discussion about the difference between average rent and median and the market rent and what's available that you would see advertised on Zillow or with the long-term rental agencies, because it certainly is not that 1,300 rent figure. Rents are much higher than that market rents. And so there's a lot to unpack there. And when you look at it, it means that in our housing work, we need to focus on protection of some of those existing naturally occurring affordable housing units. And so there's a lot of ways that you can extrapolate the data and use it in all of the work program that we have in front of us. Some of the key findings that we've identified, and again, there are many within this report, and today, just as an introduction, I wanted to focus on just this bundle here. About 7% or 1,500 acres of the island's total land area is undeveloped, and of that 1,500 acres, 28% or 425 acres is town-owned property. So that shows just that undeveloped category. Also that the LMO in conjunction with several boards and commissions regulates the character and desired development forms on the island. Redevelopment of aging retail centers and the addition of single-family homes is the biggest development trends. So we are seeing that redevelopment and single-family are those predominant building permit application types. And then while the island as a whole has the planned development zoning as its number one zoning district, overall the land uses are more evenly distributed throughout the island. There are older commercial properties that are more susceptible to change or may experience redevelopment in the near term, just based on the age of those structures and the need for significant updates. And then the housing density is slowly increasing, but varies significantly across the island's neighborhoods. And again, we just pulled a couple of the key findings, but there are many takeaways within this document. So we also, I touched on kind of how some of this information will be used and applied going forward. Of course, in district plans, we're going to identify those market trends. We're going to recognize that. We're going to be able to map that and graphically show some scenario planning. And we'll be able to do that based on the heavy data set that we have at our fingertips now. And then, we talked a little bit about the right-hand column of how it can be applied, and it can be applied in a lot longer list than what was identified here. And then the plan itself is really structured to be part of our comprehensive plan. So it is meant to become part of the island master plan along with those 8 planning districts, and then it'll be a comprehensive plan amendment to be part of our comp plan. So it is just another data set that is more targeted toward these topic areas and has a little bit more tailored to where we are currently. It's a point in time data set, and it can inform us on how we go forward. Now, we won't be done necessarily. It's a living document, and we grow and change every day. And so it will be something that we will need to update at some regular interval to understand. Now that we have this baseline, then we can see further trend data and can see if we decide that we wanted to change a specific trend, then we can map that over time and see if our intentional actions are having an impact on the data in future analyses. So I guess what we're looking for today is just one, this is delivery of this document to you as introduction. We'd like to hear questions, ideas, feedback, and that we intend to bring this back in February for a recommendation of the resolution by the Public Planning Committee, and then it would move forward to Town Council from there. And then the document would be published and then utilized throughout our organization.
Missy, thank you for the incredible job. It's a lot to absorb, but comments from the dais.
I'm happy to go first, but I'm only because you looked at me. But I'm also
please.
happy to go the other direction. So, first of all, a process question. I'm glad next steps are still up there. You mentioned that this might be a part of the comprehensive plan. And if we do make it a part of the comprehensive plan, it would need to go to Planning Commission and into Town Council. So is that the intent, or maybe let's think about it?
Well, this is part of the growth management strategy, just like the LMO is one of those steps within it. The intended idea that this would be part of the island master plan, it's an informing document that helps us with the growth framework maps and the district plans and everything that follows, which the LMO is one of those implementation steps, and that it is part of comprehensively. It's an amendment to the comp plan, and then with the districts, there's the land use element amendment too through a future land use map.
So it sounds as though it's part of this broader growth framework strategy. But as part of that, as part of their statutory requirement for us to review the comp plan every so many years, is that what you're thinking, is that we're moving through this growth management strategy process, and that somewhere along the way, we would do an amendment to the comp plan? I'm mostly asking about how does this fit in with the comp plan?
It's a little bit more defined and updated data, but it's a larger data set. There's a lot of data and information in the comp plan currently, and it's complementary to that. And in future comprehensive rewrites of the comprehensive plan, we would incorporate all of the data into one larger data set and story.
So we're not looking at amending the comp plan right now to include this. We would be
Like an
doing it
appendix.
the next time.
No, we are talking about it being an amendment to the comp plan, but not that we would reformat that document, that this would be kind of added as an appendix at the end.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because that's not in the next steps.
Yeah, it wouldn't, so adoption of this plan or acceptance of the condition and trends by town council is not the mechanism that we would then attach it to the comp plan. As Missy mentioned, our district planning, island-wide growth framework, future land use map, zoning map update, all require an update to the land use element and the comp plan. I think at that time, it would be appropriate to bring this forward and include it in the amendment to the comp plan, this plan by reference. So if we update it every 2 years, it's going to refer to the latest and greatest plan. So this is just information and recommendation for council to accept it as a tool for decision-making. And then we, in our upcoming amendment to the comp plan for these other things related to growth framework, this would be attached to that.
So February consideration of a resolution by this committee, you're mostly looking for us to accept this? ACCEPT, not EXCEPT. Pardon my southern.
Correct.
Okay. Kind of an odd process to me, but I mean,
You accept it?
well, I haven't been able to read all of it yet, so I accept that I've gotten it.
Accept the process.
Yeah, I'm just a little confused about the process, and then it says adoption by town council. So if we're going to adopt it, aren't we then amending the comp plan? So sorry, it's a legal question, I guess. But
It's okay. I think it's just the sequencing. Ultimately, it will be a comp plan amendment, but initially, we're just going to get a resolution supported by Public Planning Committee and Town Council.
say that, thank you for the report. I'm sorry.
One more time, I know everyone's hungry.
I don't mean to belittle at all this tremendous amount of research and its effectiveness with what we're doing.
I think a support via resolution from council gives us the confidence that it's a tool to help decision-making. We did the same thing with the Housing Action Framework. It was adopted by resolution. We didn't amend the housing chapter of our comp plan. But going forward, I think we should reference whatever the Housing Action Plan is. Same thing with the Mid-Island District. When we brought that forward, it was adopted by council by resolution, knowing that we would have to modify the land use element, future land use map, and zoning or LMO going forward. But it was just a point in time where council said, we support, we accept this, we think it's good, it's a tool for, that can be used for decision-making going forward.
Okay. So now I have a couple of questions. So there are 10 topic areas, and then there's 7 key trends. And then when you look at the executive summary, there are 15 major points with, best I could count, 42 bullet points. And I think you had a slide there, a couple of slides before, that had an example of key findings. I want to say there were 7 of them. Can you go back about 3 slides? Oh, there we go, key findings, perfect. So I think you said these are an example of key findings, but I think it would be helpful to, we've got the executive summary. I guess, is this now going to be put on our website for the public to see? I think it'd be very helpful for a couple different reasons. One is not only there are the topic areas, but there's key trends, but they're called 7 key trends. And then separately, there's 15 major points in the executive summary, which have 42 bullet points. So what's your question, Patsy? I guess I'm trying to figure out, in the growth management strategy, what are we supposed to be focusing on based on the conditions and trends assessment? Am I supposed to focus on all of the 10 topic areas? Am I supposed to focus on 7 key trends? Am I supposed to focus on the 15 major points or the 42 minor points? So that's my question. What am I supposed to focus on when I'm trying to make policy?
It's, the whole document is a tool to be used, and each chapter, each bullet point, or 42 of them, I guess, if you counted, are there for your use. They're the tools that are available in the toolbox, and how they get applied is to be determined.
So as we move along with whatever steps we're going to take next in growth management, then I'm to look at this and pick out pieces of it that support my argument. Is that what I'm supposed to do?
Well, it's data and information that will help us make data-driven decisions and inform how we move forward in future, adding future work to strategic action plans, for example. Could be, there's a robust implementation and recommendation section in this document as well. That's how you could analyze some of those recommendations. It's not that we're recommending that those all occur with support of this document, but that they be considered for future policy considerations and future decisions that need to be made to add those to future strategic action plans. But it's information and data that hopefully will provide for a better, more data-informed conversation.
And then there's another page, and the page numbers, all I can say is in the draft I'm looking at, it's page 134, called Current Actions, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those. So that's what I'm trying to figure out is a little help from staff to say, focus on these. I'll read the whole thing, but I need some help in focusing on where the priorities are, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's right. Go ahead.
Okay. Glenn, did you have something?
I would say that I accept this. I sincerely appreciate the extraordinary amount of work, the fascinating data that's there. I look at this document as something that would be an appendix to the comprehensive plan because it will probably be reviewed and updated more often than our plan is. Thank you for a great effort. I look forward to a working tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So many of the questions with regard to the R plan was part of my consideration, given the fact that the R plan is in fact a 10-year document with revisions anticipated within the midpoint, so coming up very soon. And so I don't want a whole lot of reliance on what the R plan says built into this document and vice versa, in our planning strategies moving forward. Having said that, there are trends that are significant, and I did read every word of it. A couple of times, as a matter of fact. I enjoyed it because there are, there is, you're correct, and thank you. There's a lot of data, and it's well-written. It's an easy read. I look forward to the public having the opportunity, because regardless of what you're interested in, you'll find something that'll hold some importance to you. But there are trends, and I think a lot of what we talked about here today pulls it together. Short-term rentals, visitors, tourism, comeback workforce, come back as a singular point to focus on, if I was finding a focus, because it leads us to where we need to be. What concerned me the most, let me get there. What concerned me the most is the action plans, wherein there are timeframes, immediate, 0 to, whatever, and then 3 to 5 years, et cetera, that are built in at the back. On many of those line items, I don't agree. And I want further discussion on those. I don't know who made those determinations, but I want a voice in that.
I want to continue that thought for just a moment. There are a number of different levels of consideration. I think that that's most strategic are excellent work. The question is, just as Councilman Becker just said, how do we weigh in? How are the timing, the more granular level of this? How do you expect council to interact in that area?
With the implementation specifically,
When would those conversations take place? Are you asking council to make comments at that level when we, quote unquote, approve by resolution this document? Or are those things that will be discussed down the road in 1 year, 2 years, whatever?
the way I envision the document being applied within our organizational structure is that those are future conversations and future additions to strategic action plans, and that, those are recommendation options, if you will, and they were organized by staff and the consultant team by which we thought were the most immediate, mid, and long-term possible threats, if that's the term for the particular topic. But that it wasn't an actual action plan, but it has those recommendations, and that those would be all future decisions.
Okay, so you're not asking the Public Planning Committee today or in February to come back and approve those action plans as concrete?
Correct. Those are for future policy decisions and directions.
Right, thank you. I'm willing to entertain a motion to move this forward.
I would move that the Public Planning Committee accept this report and recommend it forward for acceptance by the town council.
Well, you're coming back here in February?
With the resolution, yes.
Sorry, for it to come back.
Yes, thank you.
Is there a second to that?
Just to come back to us in February?
Yes. Is there a second to the motion?
So we're making,
We're accepting the
so I'll
report.
second it for the discussion, but the question, I guess, to Patsy's point of surprise is, do we need a motion to have them bring it back to us?
Today, we don't need a motion on this, no. But you're more than
Well,
welcome
we
to
can do
make
it by
one.
consensus. We aren't disagreeing with what has been presented.
I'm sorry, I didn't turn my microphone on. As I understood the motion, it was to approve it. And that's why I was going, whoop, wait, hold it. I thought we were coming back in February to consider. So.
Thought I said to accept.
Accept.
Or to accept it, yeah. Well, either way, accept or approve.
What is your preference?
I would, just if the committee wants to make a motion, it's a motion to bring this back in February with a recommendation, resolution to advance.
But a motion isn't necessary.
A motion isn't necessary. No,
By
sir.
consensus, we can.
There you go.
See you next month.
Happy to see it in February.
I recommend that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the last item for discussion is regarding the creation of a short-term rental ad hoc committee. Missy Lewick. I think a general statement would be that council has looked at this, agreed with the general direction. My only comment would be the timing of its inception. So what are other people's thoughts?
Well, I'll jump in first. I believe strongly, not only in this instance, but others, that we have strong committees, elected officials, and it is our responsibility and duties to our constituents to take the time and thoughtful consideration and stop the ever-growing number of advisory committees that are being established. We can do this work, and I am not in favor of an advisory committee for short-term rental. And in fact, the complexion of the way this is being suggested, that it would be populated, really, for the most part, is not in the residents' best interest. And I sit here first and foremost to represent the residents of this island. So I will not support a short-term rental advisory committee.
Glenn?
I too am concerned about the creation of many committees made up of citizens dealing with the work of members of council. However, I also believe that we can get detailed information from members of the committee so that the council can then act on it. So the scope of the work of the committee needs to be carefully defined. The composition of the committee needs to be refined in such a way that I would suggest that you would have an equal number of citizens and representatives of the short-term rental management companies, or that industry, if you will. And I don't see that we have that information in front of us now, but I approve of the concept once we have the details laid out so that we can make an appropriate decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I agree with most of what Mr. Stanford just said. And I'm looking at the staff report to say the recommendation that a committee be formed and then it be established after the district plans are created and the LMO quick fix amendment sets are completed. So that's a timing one. And I go along with that. I do support, I call it, for lack of something better, cross-representative, cross-functional team. And I do believe that the majority of the committee should be made up of residents. But representation, as Mr. Stanford has described, and I think we need to flesh that out a little bit more. And I think that I know there's some folks from the finance department here who look after our short-term rentals, and I think it'd be helpful to have their input as well into how a committee should be constituted.
Thank you very much. In conversations with staff, it's apparent that there may be an appropriate time for this committee to be formed, but it's later on. So I'm not advocating to form the committee at this time. If the rest of the committee agrees with that by consensus, then we'll postpone until we are closer to the LMO demand for that kind of input. Right?
Great.
Okay.
And not just the LMO portion, but also the short-term rental ordinance portion found in the municipal code.
Okay, thank you. With that, we stand.
Justin.
Yes.
These will be nice.
Yeah, please.